Breaking tonight, the first major hearing for the 6 officers charged in the arrest and death of Freddie Gray has resulted in wins for both sides. Freddie Gray suffered a severe spinal cord injury while in police custody and died a week later. Trace Gallagher is live in our West Coast newsroom with the details of what happened in court today. Trace?
Megan, the 6 Baltimore police officers charged in the death of Freddie Gray were not in court today, but there were 14 defense attorneys and 7 prosecutors. And while it wasn't a clean sweep for prosecutors, the judge did give them most of what they wanted. First, a defense request to dismiss the charges was denied. Then the defense asked that Baltimore State's Attorney Recuse Mosby be recused from the case for talking to the media about evidence and for saying this when she announced the charges back in May. Listen.
I heard your call for no justice, no peace. Your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of this young man.
The defense claims no justice, no peace essentially meant no conviction, no peace. The judge did admonish Mosby, saying it was troubling and inappropriate for her to discuss evidence, especially about whether the officers were cooperating with investigators. But the judge ruled these were not grounds for dismissal. The prosecution also wanted the officers tried in groups of 2 or 3. Instead, the judge granted the defense request to try them individually. So far, no word on who will go first, but 6 trials means 6 opportunities for potential unrest. Here's the Baltimore mayor.
What that means is we'll have 6 different, we'll have to monitor 6 different trials and the flashpoints associated with them, and we'll be ready for it.
Hundreds of people signed up on Facebook to demonstrate outside the courthouse today. Only a few dozen showed up. It's been 3 months since Freddie Gray died of severe spinal injuries he apparently suffered while in a police transport van. Next week, the defense will ask for a change of venue, arguing the officers cannot get a fair trial in Baltimore. Megan.
That's going to be the big one. Trace, thank you. Joining me now, Mark Eiglarsh, who's a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Arthur Aidala is a New York trial attorney and Fox News contributor. Good to see you both. So I don't think anybody here expected the defense to win those first 2 motions. But let's talk about the motion that they did win to have this case tried. They wanted individual trials for each defendant. And, Mark, they got it.
Megan, this is huge. First of all, the 2 motions, recusing her and dismissal, about as predictable as Arthur showing up with no hair. Less predictable is that he'd have the tan of an Oompa Loompa. That just blows me away. But as to the motion, sorry, I had to go there, Arthur. I love you, brother. As to the motion being granted, this is a huge victory for the defense. As a trial lawyer, there's nothing worse than having a potentially antagonistic defense where you want to say, it wasn't me, it was Officer Jones who did that. It was Smith, it was a... No. Now you're separate. You can clearly go out and tell jurors, that wasn't my responsibility. That was this officer. That's this officer. It is right. Mm-hmm. Great decision.
And
go ahead, Arthur.
You also, the whole element of surprise that is innate in our system, where you don't know what the witnesses are going to say, with the exception of whoever gets tried first, goes out the window for the other 5. Do you know what a luxury it is to have all of that evidence, that you know what they're going to say, you have the transcripts to cross-examine someone, and then if you're the 4th person who actually goes to trial, and Megan, I don't think that's going to happen. I think after the 1st or 2nd trial, they will be plea bargains one way or the other.
What did you make of the fact?
An enormous. I can't agree with Mark more.
It's a huge victory for the defense. What did you make of the fact that the judge, Judge Barry Williams, gave Mosby some what for her comments that we've been talking about on this show? And I have to say, we wound up in agreement with the judge that they were problematic and inappropriate, but not enough to recuse her. He came out and said he was troubled by it, Mark. He was troubled by it. And then he questioned her on her, well, I was just trying to keep the peace defense of her comments. And he came out and said, really, is that your job, to keep the peace, or is it to prosecute cases? This guy gets it.
I love it, but I think it went in one ear, out the other. She doesn't care what he thinks. What I do think is extraordinary, as big as this ruling, is that this judge, in spite of the fear in that climate, in that city, where people are metaphorically running around with pitchforks and burning property down, this judge, in spite of that pressure, followed the law and made the right rulings on all 3 of these motions.
And the other thing he did, Arthur, is he placed under seal a couple of things, the police dispatch tape and the redacted statements of the officers. That was also probably saying, I mean, as a member of media, I always want to see this stuff. But if I were the judge in this case, I'd probably issue that same ruling. What about you?
I agree, and I agree with Mark. I think it's not what the judge ruled, but the fact that he had the guts to do it, considering what happened in the past and what was happening right there and then. They knew, okay, it wasn't a huge protest, but protesting was starting right outside the courthouse. You don't want to be the individual to start another one of those riots. But, Megyn, what I'm looking for, and I did a little research on the Maryland law, and it can happen, is for the defense to make the motion of, Your Honor, we want you to read the grand jury minutes, and we want you to make sure the grand jurors were presented sufficient evidence, that there were sufficient facts to support these charges, especially the one with murder against the driver.
So, in other words, the defense is going to try to get this case kicked based on motion practice and to keep it from a jury again. They're going to try to have another bite at that apple. But I want to ask you this. Mark Eiglarz, let me ask you this. The big one is September 10th. That's the motion to get this case removed from the city of Baltimore. And, I mean, look at what happened today. Have you ever seen protesters when a motion is argued? It's a motion being argued.
Crazy. And I'm talking to you, Miss Mosby, because I know you watch this show. Agree to the motion. It is supported by the law and the facts. This case should be transferred out of that city where the heat and the fear is extraordinary. Just do the right thing. I challenge you.
She'll still have the case, Arthur. She'll still have the case. The only question is whether these officers can get a fair trial in this city.
But the thing is, Megyn, here's the real problem. It's such a small state. Like, where are they going to go?
There's another county to which they often transfer cases from Baltimore.
Anywhere else, Arthur.
Yeah, but look,
I almost called you Martha.
Arthur,
Mark, anywhere else.
But, Mark, when it happens in New York and you could go 150 miles away to Albany, there's a real change of venue. Here, the judge, he's already indicated
Arthur,
that he doesn't like her statements.
You do
it. There's a huge difference in another county.
You do it for two reasons.
Go ahead,
do
Mark.
it for two reasons. Number one, if there are convictions, you don't want that to be an issue on appeal. So why go through this whole thing again? And number two, it's just the right thing to do.
I got to go, but I want to ask you this quickly before we go, Arthur.
I don't see it happening,
The trial is scheduled right now for October 13th. Is there any chance any of these people gets tried on it? No. That's too early.
No way. There's more motion practice, more discovery,
Mark?
a lot more homework to do on both sides.
Oompa?
Arthur, go work on that.
Great to see you both. Got to go.
Yeah. Take care.
Well, it comes as no surprise that among today's protests in Baltimore were folks from the Black Lives Matter movement. Up next, we will introduce you to the Marine veteran, adding his name to the list of those questioning this movement now. And then Mark Furman and Richard Fowler are here to weigh in on the latest from the group. Plus, if you're thinking about going to the beach this holiday weekend, stay tuned for a word from this guy.
As the sharks show up in larger numbers, the seals take notice of this, and they actually stay very close to shore themselves. So the seals are right along the shoreline, which of course would draw the sharks in very, very close.